has just perplexed so many of us about what happened on the CTA train this week. A woman fighting for her life right now, and there are just so many different aspects of it that make you wonder, what can be done differently in the future. Could it have been just any one of us? What do we do if we're in a certain situation on a train or any type of mass transit? I want to bring in Steve Rotolo. He is a security expert, a retired assistant port authority chief from New Jersey and New York, 33 years in law enforcement. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I wish that we were speaking under better circumstances, but we really wanted to discuss with you the issue of how to be a better bystander. I mean, if something does go wrong, you spent a large portion of your career in counterterrorism, so mass transit would be a part of what you looked at on a regular basis. What do we do?
So there's a lot of things we can do, and it starts with situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings. This young woman was looking at her phone when the attack occurred, not blaming her, but when you're on a city subway, a city bus, look at the young lady in Charlotte who got stabbed in the back of the neck as she was looking at her phone. Be aware of your surroundings. And that's a lot of things. That's not looking at your phone. That's not AirPods or headphones in. So you couldn't hear somebody approaching you. You couldn't hear footsteps. And listen, at the end of the day, when you're sitting there and you are the victim of an attack, and this poor young lady, as soon as she smelled the gasoline, there's a good chance if she was lit on fire, which did happen, that you're going to die. You have to fight like your life depends on it. And you're talking about bystanders. We'll go back to Charlotte. Nobody helped that young woman on the bus. Nobody helped this young lady till she got to the platform. That's when the Good Samaritans extinguished her. Listen, we have to become better human beings too, where, at the end of the day, how do you know that he's not going to move from that young lady lighting her on fire to attacking other people? Like I said, somebody's got to step in. First of all, I get it. The fear kicks in. You're fearing for your own life because you see, obviously, that this is a serious incident. And we're social animals, human beings. We follow cues of other people. When other people react and respond, you'll see more people jump in. Be that person who jumps in. Be that person who helps somebody in need and somebody, in danger. Because at the end of the day, you could be the next victim. So you could stop that attack. You could stop it from going on and becoming a major attack. What's to say he didn't have a firearm with him? We know he didn't, but when you're in that tubular environment, you're a train, you're trapped. So you would hope more people would jump in. But then again, you watch what happened with Daniel Penny in New York City. He jumped in, he did the right thing, he was on trial, and that's what a lot of people don't want to get involved.
Right. I mean, obviously, you assume a lot of risk in jumping into situations that you're unfamiliar with, for sure. What would you say is the most effective way for a bystander to alert authorities of an emergency situation?
See, well, you're kind of trapped. You're on that train. Like I said, you're in a tube, the tunnel, and you're on the train car, which is a tube. There's really not much you could do till the train stops. And, it's going to take time for the police to respond. But there were people on the train that could have assisted in putting her out. She was rolling on the ground from what I've read and seen. And it wasn't until she got to the platform at the first station they stopped at that people actually extinguished her. Like, you know what? If you're not going to get involved and stop the attack, you could at least stop the damage that's taking place afterwards. If it's taking your coat off and wrapping that young lady in to extinguish the flames, you would hope people would jump in and take some kind of action.
You mentioned the Penny situation in New York. Obviously, we've seen it because so many people took their phones out and recorded it. Should people try to record it for the sake of a possible investigation that might play out later, or does that just create more risk?
I mean, well, I would rather have people, instead of taking their phone out to record, to step in to intervene. They had to see this guy, and from everything I've seen and read, he dumped the gas on her. She got up, ran away. So they saw him trying to light the bottle. Apparently he dropped it. Then he did light her. Nobody could have intervened in between there. You know, it didn't look like a pack train, but there were a couple people on the train with her at the time of the attack that somebody could have intervened and stopped that attack, or at least assisted her.
Yeah. Do you, I mean, there's got to be a sense, though, of shock, too, that goes over people like, what am I looking at? Because no one thinks that something like that is going to happen in front of them. And does that hinder reports to police? Like, I'm not even
Well,
sure if I could tell this story the way it happened because of the shock I was in.
so in most major attack scenarios, where there's an active shooter or active attack like this, most people do deny initially that there's an attack going on. And you know, your brain sees it like, wait, this is out of the norm, this doesn't normally occur, and you go into denial. Then you're going into deliberation, like, what should I do? Should I act? Should I not act? Then you move to that time where it's decisive moment where you're going to take action, whether it's to run, hide, fight. So, you know, people do. And it's, like I said, it's a natural reaction. It's something that you don't normally see. And, you know, same thing if you saw somebody getting stabbed, you'd be like, wait, what did I just see?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, you know, extraordinary incident and horrible. I feel horrible for this young lady.
Yeah, and does it go into like, can police trust the account of people who may have, like, did I see what I think I saw? Like, how from a law enforcement perspective, how do you break down like, no, this is a legit account versus I'm not quite sure they got it right. I think they were a little fuzzy at the time.
So you could have a, you know, a serious criminal incident and you could have 20 eyewitnesses and you could have 20 different versions of what
Mm-hmm.
happened, you know, from, you know, let's say the color of a handgun. It was black, it was stainless steel, it was gold, you know, to he had a gray hooded sweatshirt on and it was a white hooded sweatshirt. So, you know, you got to go through everybody, you got to interview everybody. And thankfully, you know, in our transit systems now, between the trains, the platforms, the stations, and, you know, the police did a great job following the incident, gathering evidence. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even all the way back to the gas station where he purchased the gasoline. So, you know, eventually they're going to get caught.
Yeah. Do transit agencies actually provide some information? I don't know, some information to passengers on how to respond to emergencies like this?
Yeah, I know in New York City and at the Port Authority facilities, we always had, you know, in the train cars, there was posters and there is emergency call buttons on the trains, on the platforms. And, you know, these major transit systems like Chicago, New York, and other major cities, the camera network is extensive in these systems. So, you know, you might not think you're being watched, you're being watched. And thankfully, they had all of the videos in the train car that they could use for the investigation.
Yeah. Given the things that you've seen from, and maybe talk to us about some of the things that you did see in terms of crimes on the Port Authority and how those investigations played out. Thinking in mind of the bystanders, like how they were a part of it, how they aided you all.
Okay. So, first off, transportation facilities, they're magnets for the mentally ill, the homeless, the non-domiciled population, and these are the people that are violent. I mean, I was reading articles about the suspect in this case where he's been arrested multiple times for just punching people and attacking people. So, you know, when you're in a transit facility, like I said, you got to take that into account. And people are usually in such a rush and not paying attention. You have to take your time, be aware of your surroundings, no matter where you go. And I used to tell people when you're taking the subway, you're taking, you know, don't step up to that yellow line at the end of the platform. You know, you're making yourself a potential victim, especially when you have your headphones on, and somebody's going to push you in front of a
Mm.
train. Stay with your back to the wall. There's a lot of steps you can take. But, you know, listen, we've seen some horrific crimes. The Port Authority operated the Port Authority bus terminal, which is the largest bus terminal in the world. 8,000 buses a day go through there, so a couple 100,000 passengers a day. We operated the busiest airports, you know, Kennedy, LaGuardia, Newark. We had the PATH system, which is an underground railroad from New York to New Jersey, 400,000 passengers a day. So, anything you see on your transit systems in Chicago, we saw there.
Yeah. And what would you like to see moving forward that could be done to better protect people from these types of incidents?
Well, the first thing I would like to see is everyday citizens becoming more involved. Listen, police officers aren't omnipresent. We're not going to be everywhere. You can't be everywhere. You see somebody in need, help out. And that goes for, I've been teaching a lot of active attack classes, and I'm telling people when I'm teaching it, learn basic first aid skills, learn CPR, learn, how to stop the bleed. There's a course given by DHS. It's a 10-minute PowerPoint online. You could save somebody's life that could potentially die from bleeding out. So, there's things you could do that could save somebody. Even in the event, if you don't get involved in stopping an attack, you could get involved afterwards and you could save somebody's life. You could put a tourniquet on somebody, you could apply pressure to a wound and stop bleeding. We just got to become better people, better citizens too.
Yeah. When you see something like this happen, do you think, here we go again, or what does go through your mind?
Well, unfortunately, working, like I said, 25 years of my 33 were in a transit police department. So these were incidents that we did see. We saw things like this frequently, and you saw a lot of unprovoked violent attacks. And like I said, the common denominator was, the situational awareness. These people weren't paying attention. They didn't see the potential threat, and they didn't react in time. Like, not that you're expecting to be attacked, but you have to be aware where you are. You're not in your own car. You're not in your home. You're in a strange, surrounding environment. So you are a potential victim. And these are spots where, there's not a cop everywhere.
Yeah. Well, again, and can't say it enough, we're certainly hoping that the young woman makes a full recovery. But we certainly appreciate your time today and sharing your expertise for sure. We don't want to see anyone else go through what she went through, but you're correct that we hope that if someone does have an emergency, others would be willing to step in.